Sprint Burst, Self-Care, and Decisive Strike are all getting nerfed, while other perks like Deja Vu and Calm Spirit, among many others, are being buffed. Some of these changes are expected to come with the mid-chapter update, while others are still going to be undergoing further testing. I've had a lot of you guys asking me what I think about the perk changes, so let's take a look at them.
So Sprint Burst is a great ability that allows you to break into a sprint at 150% your speed for 3 seconds on running. So as soon as you start running, you will consume the Sprint Burst perk and go on cooldown. Now, the modified effect that we decided to add is that while you run, you cannot actually recover from exhaustion.
That affects all exhaustion perks.
Well, initially we wanted to affect just Sprint Burst.
Only Sprint Burst, but exhaustion should probably be the same no matter
probably
where you get
affect
it from.
everywhere. Yeah. So right now, what we're going to be trying for this mid-chapter release is that each of the exhaustion perks will not recover while you're running.
I really think that this is a good idea. Having the exhaustion cooldown not actually decrease if you're still running makes a lot of sense to me. I've often been in chases where I sprint burst at the start and then I wind up looping them for so long that I get to sprint burst again, and it just doesn't really make sense, so I'm perfectly okay with this change, and I actually look forward to seeing it happen. One thing that I would change about it though is that I would put sprint burst on an activated key, instead of just having it trigger on its own. Just like Dead Hard is an activated ability, I think sprint burst should too. That way survivors don't have to worry about just running and wasting it, only to run into the killer a few seconds later before their timer's up again. If they leave it as is where it automatically triggers every time you sprint, it's definitely going to make survivors need to be smarter about when they sprint, but I do admit that I've wasted sprint bursts many of times when I accidentally sprint, which would be even more detrimental to the survivor once these changes go in.
Decisive Strike.
Not in the PTB, not in the mid-chapter patch, but we're working on it.
Yeah. We tried the once per match when the killer is, when grabbed by the killer, you will stun the killer in place if you succeed a skill check, of course, for 2.5, or 3 seconds, and you will not be dropped. This is supposed to be an occasion for your teammates to come in and save you with a flashlight save or a pallet stun if you so happen to be under a pallet. We're making sure that the actual perk is fun to use. Yep. Before committing to doing animations and fleshing out the perk completely.
So when the killer is stunned in place, you can still wiggle.
You can still wiggle.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's the
idea. That aspect. Yeah, and we also investigated, instead of having just the great skill check zone, right? So then the really hard skill check, we'll have a good and a great.
Like a small stun and a big stun.
And a great. Yeah, so that you can get an extra stun time from the great.
Alright, so these Decisive Strike changes that they're proposing are actually very similar to what I suggested in my previous Decisive Strike video. The only things that I would change about it is that I would make the stun time last a little bit longer, just so the stun is on par with what Decisive Strike's stun currently is, even though the survivor's not actually going to be dropped anymore. I think I would also have rather seen a wiggle percentage gain during that stun time, because once you hit that skill check and then go back to wiggling, I really don't know how much you're actually going to progress the wiggle meter. So I think a flat % wiggle still would be a better idea.
Self-care. Right, so this is the last one on the list at the moment. It unlocks the ability to heal yourself without a healing item, of course, at 50% your normal healing speed. And what we wanted to try was that interrupting the self-care action before you've healed the health state will reset any progress in that health state to 0. That's what we initially tried.
So
that's awesome.
If you stop for any reason, your healing bar goes back to 0.
Goes to 0.
To 0.
Not back to 0. It goes like it just resets completely.
Yeah, regardless of what it was, it goes to 0.
Yeah. Now this might have been too strong. Obviously, we did get some feedback internally.
Too strong of a nerf.
Yeah. What we're going to try instead is that if, let's say, you have 75% progression that was added through a regular healing means, so for example, you were healing with a med kit, or like a friend was healing you, whatever the case may be, if you start self-caring and you stop, it will just reset to the point where
it was
before.
Okay, so basically any heals that is coming from someone else is safe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or through a med kit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, when you get knocked down, you do get your health state reset to 0 when you get picked back up.
Like you used to.
Like always. So.
But it's still. So for example, I self-care in a corner, and then I get interrupted. That still goes back to 0. I can't.
Yes.
I can't just go finish up the heal behind a pallet or something.
No, it'd be a long behind the pallet heal.
That's not in the PTB.
Not in the PTB.
It's not in the mid-chapter patch.
Not in the mid-chapter patch.
We want to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least you don't lose the heals that other people or medkits put on you. And I think they're actually going a little bit too far with these nerfs here. I really don't think that all the progress that you've self-cared up should disappear instantaneously once you stop for even just half of a second. There's a lot of times where I start healing myself and then somebody else shows up and wants to finish healing me. So if I actually stop, it's gonna probably take longer for them to do it from the very beginning if I'm close to the end of finishing myself off. Instead, I think it should be that the healing progress actually decays over a period of time, but eventually does go back to the 0.
Deja
Isn't that
vu.
funny? That's my birthday joke.
Deja vu.
Yeah.
Feels like I've been here before.
Oh, no. Oh, yes, you did it. So this is coming for the mid-chapter patch. It unlocks the potential in one's aura reading ability as normal. Paranoia paired with your horror of failure helps prepare you from repeating the same mistakes. Now, the aura of 3 generators, which are in close proximity to one another, are going to be revealed to you for 30, 45, and 60 seconds at the start of the match, and each time a generator is completed. If you're holding a map that can track objectives, the objectives revealed will be added to the map.
So the difference is that instead of all the generators at the beginning and then nothing for the rest of the game.
When you say all the generators, you mean 1 or 2,
Yeah,
right?
1 or 2.
Oh, sorry. I forgot how bad Deja Vu was. So instead now it's the 3 closest generators that are together, not the closest to you, but the 3 that are closest to each other.
Yep.
And it's revealed at the beginning of the game, and then again every time a generator is completed.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty neat.
It is pretty disgusting. So I was playing with it, and I was always like, okay, those are the 3 generators. Clearly that one is the middle of all that. And then I would knock that out, and then the killer would have to deal with an even further distance. So you had some interesting insights on how people would be using this and how,
Oh yeah.
how it might change how people are playing.
I thought this was interesting. If this becomes popular, it's impossible to tell so
It's
early.
impossible
But
to
let's
tell.
say this became popular, it could be something that killers have play with too, because if they can identify what the 3 closest are, then they know that people are going for them. It becomes an interesting zone of play.
Contention, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So I think it's an interesting perk. I'm excited to see if it gets played.
Yikes. This perk, I know it really needs to be reworked. So at the start of the game, and any time that any generator gets started, you're gonna see 3 other generators. I think that this definitely needs to be toned down a bit, and maybe try making it 2 generators. And if that's still too strong with the gen rushes, then maybe just go down to showing 1 generator. As someone who spends most of their time as a survivor sneaking around and just doing generators, I definitely feel like this is way too strong, and it's gonna make the gen rushes even more insane.
Calm Spirit reduces the chances of alerting woodland creatures for those of you at home, that is crows.
But Calm Spirit does not affect the horse.
So Calm Spirit, we're going to be adding the ability to stop yourself from screaming when you get affected by madness, by the clown's bottle, so the gas rather, and perhaps other screams in the game. We're trying to figure out exactly which screams this will be affecting. This could affect your dying hook screams, you getting knocked down, you getting hit.
Some people who are really attuned to sound are able to tell which direction a survivor zooms off on based on like how they're screaming. So possibly the ability to, if this perk were to remove that scream, then maybe survivors would be able to use it to their advantage to be able to juke around and be a little stealthier in their escape.
Okay.
If you're looking at your portraits in your UI, you will notice when someone gets hit and you'll notice when someone gets downed, right? Now, obviously, if they're running knockout, this could be a bad thing for you because you've just pretty much hidden your exact location on the map. So it can have positives or negatives depending on how you see it. We're going to test it out and see how it works. So this is coming for the mid-chapter patch.
It is.
This is an interesting change, and I can definitely see it being viable. I really love using Iron Will, so having another perk to muffle or prevent your screams sounds like a really good idea to me, and something that I would be interested in using. I would especially like to see it working on screams when your friends are healing you and they stab you, as well as other screams like a failed skill check for snap out of it, or even stabbing yourself with self-care. However, I would like to know what % chance it is to overcome the screams, because when I play killer, the audio cues are key to finding survivors. So I hope that they release more information on that.
So Ace in the Hole initially has given you a 100% chance, I think it was actually a variable chance, to find an add-on in the chest.
Yeah, so when you loot an item in the chest,
Oh, good point.
Ace in the Hole would give you a chance to get an add-on on
Yes.
that item.
Of very rare quality or lower.
Right, no brand new parts.
No brand new parts. We have added the ability to add a 10% chance to find a second add-on, 25 or 50% chance as it increases for a uncommon or lower
For a
rarity.
second add-on.
That's a nice change to Ace in the Hole. And not only will it synergize even better with Plunderer's Instinct, but I can see it being helpful just on its own.
Sole Survivor. As more of your friends fall to the killer, you are shrouded in isolation. The killer's aura reading abilities towards you are disrupted. So now, your aura cannot be read by the killer within a max range. So what this means is that starting from your point to where the killer is, if he's within that range, he won't be able to read you, right?
Yep.
The ranges are 16, 18, and 20. These values can change, of course.
They might even be different.
For each killed and sacrificed survivor, you will gain a 16, 18, or 20 meter range where the killer won't be able to see you. So at the beginning of the game, obviously, you will have a 0 increased range as no one has died yet. As soon as one person has died, you'll have a 20 meter range. So for example, if the killer is running Nurse's Calling and you are within 20 meters, so the first 20 meters of Nurse's Calling, he will not be able to read you while you self-care.
Yeah.
But if you're outside that range, so basically in the 20 to 28 range, then he will see you, right? As soon as another person dies, now your actual aura reading range is hidden up to 40 meters.
Those are the numbers, but eventually we're going to think about barbecue.
To be fair, it actually still scales based on level, perk level, and number of people dead.
It totally does.
But it's easier to understand.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I simplified.
Well, they're really making Soul Survivor good for a sneaky beaky sort of playstyle. But I think that the numbers definitely need some tweaking. At tier 3, with 2 people dead before you, you are immune to Nurse's Calling and you're immune to Deerstalker. And as somebody who uses those 2 perks very regularly, I haven't used Soul Survivor in a very long time. If the perk stays as proposed, I would certainly consider putting it back in my perk build. I think that those numbers definitely need to be lowered a little bit.
Dark Sense. So it unlocks the potential in one's aura reading ability. Sounds familiar. Each time you complete a generator, each time you complete a generator, the killer's aura will be revealed to you for 5 seconds. And, each time a generator is completed, so it's not actually when you complete a generator. And when the last generator is powered, the killer's aura is revealed to you for 5, 7, and 10 seconds. So, Bitter Murmur, nice segue, unlocks potential in one's aura reading ability.
Deja vu?
Oh, we did it again. Each time a generator is fully repaired, survivors within 60 meters of the completed generator will be revealed for 5 seconds.
So now...
And when the last generator is fully repaired, all the survivor auras are revealed for 5, 7, and 10 seconds. That is tier 1, 2, and 3. Thank you, Louis.
Because Dark Sense and Bitter Murmur, they were mirrored before,
Yeah.
but they only trigger at the end of the game.
It's only an endgame perk.
Now they will be triggering over the course of the game as generators complete, both the killer version and the survivor version.
Exactly. So they will play on each
And
other.
also the area is 16 meters at max level. If you are in the area, and you run out of it, you're still being you still.
If you were within 16 meters of the generator when it got completed for 5 seconds, your aura will shine bright.
With the Survivor version Dark Sense and then the Killer version basically being the same thing but counters to each other, it overall feels really balanced to me, and it certainly makes the perks much more viable than they were before this change when they only worked after the exit gates were powered. I don't think that I'll use Dark Sense as a Survivor, but I would really love to try using Bitter Murmur with NOED.
So Tinkerer, we've talked about multiple times about removing Tinkerer as it scales very poorly.
Tinkerer had sort of 2 major problems. It did push certain
Powers?
Certain powers, yeah. So what Tinkerer used to do, for those who don't know what Tinkerer did, is that it would increase the effectiveness of add-ons that made your power charge faster. So for things that let you set your traps faster, charge or rev your chainsaw faster, it would make those add-ons even stronger, a flat 10%. So it was very hard to balance this when it was giving the same bonus to all add-ons regardless of how those add-ons were supposed to scale. So now there's a new, very different concept for Tinkerer. We talked about it on a stream before. This is where we are with it now. Tell us what you think.
So when a generator is repaired at 90%, you receive a noise notification and your tear radius is reduced to 0 meters for 4, 6, and 8 seconds. So what this means is that when a generator is close to completion, you will get a noise notification. You'll be like, okay, it's that one. And then your tear radius will be reduced to 0. So if you're in a chase with somebody, that means that they no longer think that, or they don't know that you're right behind them, you know. And if you'd like to use that to beeline towards a generator, talking to you, Mr. Billy, Silent Billy, you will murder some people, especially if you've got Bitter Murmur. So we used to have that at 95%. We already put that down to 90%. It might still be a little high. We will check.
Oh my god, that sounds insanely strong. 8 seconds of no terror radius, and you get a noise notification every time a gen reaches 90%. I really love the sound of that as a killer, but I feel like that's going to be way too strong unless there's some sort of internal cooldown for when it can trigger or how often on the same generator. So let's say that you get to that generator that just triggered and you kick it so it's no longer 90%. If they touch it again and it hits 90%, will the 8 seconds refresh again? Will it give you another noise indication? I really think that those are something that they need to address and let us know, because that perk sounds really, really good and I would love to use that. But holy crap, as a survivor, please no, don't make it like that.
Predator. Previously, Predator has increased the duration of scratch marks so that they lasted longer. Now the scratch marks left by survivors will spawn tighter together instead of being as big of a distribution, which means you should, in theory, see less on the walls and more of a straight line to a survivor. Mm-hmm. Now, the values that we currently have might be too strong, and you might have a B line to a survivor, so we might have to increase that slightly. But the idea of the perk is to have a better control of scratch marks.
I definitely agree that Predator in its current state makes it really difficult to track survivors unless that survivor is running lightweight. So I would really like to see this perk in action with some visuals, because just seeing slightly, moderately, and considerably close together scratch marks, it's really hard to visualize how effective Predator could now be. But it definitely sounds like a step in the right direction.
So whispers. You have rudimentary understanding of the entity's voice. Sporadically hear the entity's whisper when standing within a 24-meter range of a survivor. So we've changed it to make a smaller range, right? First of all, I just want to mention this is not coming for the mid-chapter patch.
We're looking at whispers.
Yeah.
Here's one idea.
Yeah. So we would reduce the range from 32 to 24. And the power of whispers would increase its range by 10, 8, and 6 meters for each survivor that is killed. What that would mean is that your 24-meter whispers range would increase per person who dies. So 24 would become 30, 36, and then 42 at the final
So it's
number.
stronger early game,
Yeah.
weaker end game.
I've never been a fan of whispers except for on the doctor. And even using tier 3 whispers, I find that a lot of times you spend too much time looking for the person and then they just wind up getting away, or you waste too much time. I like that the change that they're going for is to make the perk more powerful early on, but once you kill the second survivor, the perk is pretty much useless because the range becomes so large that it's going to be extremely difficult to find anybody anyway. And the people who do use whispers to find that last survivor, I expect that they'll just drop using whispers altogether, since at that point in the game it's not very helpful.
Sloppy butchers, so you know where to hit them to make them bleed. Wounds inflicted by successful attacks will slightly, moderately, and considerably increase the survivor's bleeding frequency. This is actually hemorrhage. We should make sure to change that to this hemorrhage status effect.
Very well.
And causes now the mangled status effect.
So really what it says now is when you hit a survivor, they are mangled and hemorrhaging until healed.
Yeah, that's exactly
What does
it.
mangled do?
Mangled makes it so that it takes longer to heal that survivor.
So
I think
it makes
the
sense.
default is 25%
Yeah.
penalty to healing speeds on that survivor.
That's a solid change to Sloppy Butcher. I still don't think it's going to be used by a lot of killers, but I can certainly see wanting to give it a shot on Wraith. This mangle effect combined with the self-care nerf could certainly make it a pain to heal, especially if the killer wants to run Colorophobia with it as well.
Save the best for last. Earn a token for each successful hit that is not dealt to the obsession. So each time you hit somebody who's not the obsession, you're going to get a token. Each token grants a stackable 5% decreased successful attack cooldown. So every time you successfully hit somebody, the Blade Wipe that you do after will be reduced
It gets
by
shorter and shorter.
5% for each token. Up to 8 tokens, that's 40%.
40%.
Attacking your obsession, however, will make you lose 4, 3, and 2 tokens. This is based on your perk level. And you can no longer gain tokens if your obsession is sacrificed or killed. Now, what this means is you'd like to get as many stacks from people who are not the obsession before murdering your obsession.
Right.
I do believe that the obsession can be on the hook and on his way to die while you go smack other people and get your tokens.
Yep.
So
And you're not getting a hit, you go keep your tokens. So you have your 8 tokens for the rest of the match. So if you play this really well, this can stay as powerful as you have it.
The problem with this perk is, unless you're paying attention on the starting lobby screen, you're not going to know which survivor is which in order to not hit your obsession. I really don't like the whole idea with the tokens because of that reason. It's pretty common that survivors come and try to help one another with body blocks and stuff, and it happens pretty often that you wind up hitting the wrong survivor. I think a better change would have been just to make it last longer after being in that chase for 20 seconds. Increase those 5 seconds to maybe 15 or 30 seconds even, and then I could see the perk being more useful. Well guys, that's all the perk changes that they've told us about. I'd love to know your thoughts on the changes as well though. Let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.